My husband is a retired doctor. Now that's funny, I'm sure he would have been able to get things moving for him, but he couldn't. But, you know, 4 weeks is just ridiculous. So what are we doing about that?
Thank you for those points. And I'm going to try and avoid jargon and working in silos. So the focus of the Urgent Treatment Centre and the Urgent Care Offer is exactly that. It's about having urgent access, if you need same day, urgent access to healthcare. Some of the things you start to touch on are whereby people are technically deemed to have a non-urgent need. Now, I'm not accepting or saying that waiting 4 weeks is acceptable. We clearly need to do something about that. And I recognise that some of the changes around urgent care and planned care have been talked around for many months and years. Some of the changes that are different this year, that are in the middle of being implemented, include this extended access increase, so additional GP and nurse appointments, as I've described, 8 till 8, 7 days a week. By December this year, there will be in place an additional 1,080 additional appointments per week. Now that's significant and that is different, and that is a big driver from NHS England to really improve urgent access to GP and nurse appointments. A couple of other things that I think are different are that I don't know if people in the room have used it, the 111 offer. It's had very mixed feedback and very mixed experience from people. That has been acknowledged by NHS England, and that is a huge driver to radically overhaul that and improve that service this year. We're halfway through that change, and I've looked at the performance for Wirral, and we have got a significant improvement from people who are calling 111, who are being clinically assessed, triaged and advised for either a prescription or an immediate GP appointment being booked, whatever that might be, on the phone, immediate clinical assessment with a view to an outcome. That was very different a few months ago. Those two things are making a difference for people. The GP appointments should start to reduce the waiting time for people who are seen as less urgent, but we need to evidence that and monitor the impact of that over the next few months. And the final thing I'd say that I think is different is that we're just trying to look at how we really expand the technology solutions, because I think that some of the technology things that are now becoming available are very exciting, and if we can implement those properly, those things will support many people being able to remain at home, be able to manage the self-care far more effectively, and ultimately will release again more GP and nurse appointments. I know we haven't got time to give some examples tonight. I'm very happy to give people some examples about how some of those things can ultimately impact and longer term free up more GP time.
Maybe we could get our Hoylake and West Kirby Community Forum off the ground. You'll still come along and speak to us about that. Now look, I'm conscious that there's a lot of people playing golf. I'm going to break my own rule, Phil. You'll still get the last word. The gentleman at the back with beard, and then it's Phil, and then we move on to the golf resort.
You suggested that changing demographic in the world. I guess someone's model had changed the demographic. Who was it?
Okay, so we've got our public health colleagues, are the experts on the modelling, and they do all the local modelling, but it's based on stats that they work through with NHS England, so they don't do that in splendid isolation, but our public health colleagues help with that, and they work with CCG, Business Intelligence, to do that demographic modelling.
Okay, is that same model being used for planning the number of houses?
Well, there we are, there's an interesting crossover. Okay, you're all right. Good, probably would be the answer. Phil, I did promise you the last word.
Thank you very much, Chair. Jacqui, if you remember last time you came here, I got up and asked you the question about the closing of walk-in centres, and you said no. But I think your comments on communication to people, I think you're dead right. You're not communicating with the people. I mean, I'd like to know how many people in this room were aware of what you've just spoken about tonight, probably not a lot of them, and that's not being disrespectful to the people here. Following your last visit and the consultations that you held, halfway through those consultations, our council threw them out, but you carried on with the consultations. Now, on top of that, there was over 50,000 petition signatures put forward about keeping the walking centres open. You have turned around and said tonight that if you're between 0 and 18 years of old, you'd still use those walking centres. So I would go by that anyone who's in the 50s, 60s, 70s, you're going to have to jump on a bus or whatever, car, taxi, and off to the urgent care centre at Adder Park. That's not acceptable. No, especially to Eastern And the last point is, the point you made to start with, you said there was an independent company, that you'd employed an independent company to carry out consultation results. Can you tell us tonight who is paying for that company to do those results?
Okay, thank you for the question.
Actually, Jacqui, it still says it's only going to be a very short. This will be a very short reply, because I'm sure there are people who want to talk about green belt and corporate ordinance.
Just to clarify, the points I was making about the 0 to 18 were part of the consultation proposals. I'm not using that to describe what will inevitably happen with our final recommendation. I was referring back to what was originally on the table as a suite of proposals, and that was one part of it. I absolutely stand by the point I've made. The proposals were not about putting everything to Cllr Park, but we are giving due consideration to everything we've got in. You're absolutely right, we had an awful lot of feedback, which is one of the reasons we've asked for the capacity from an independent consultancy who do this sort of work. This is what they do for a living, and we wanted to be able to say this is independently being looked at, so that we as commissioners are not sitting in a room deciding, look at that ourselves. So there's that scrutiny is there. Hitch have gone through a due process. We have got tenders, and we've awarded appropriately. The clinical commissioning group have funded for that work to be completed.
Okay. Right. Thank you very much for that. I thought it was, maybe it's my advance in years, I don't know, but I get more and more interested in this sort of stuff as I get older. So, thank you very much for the update. We'll await developments, and no doubt, hopefully, we can support any communication effort that is subsequently required. So, thank you very much for that. My colleague has advised me, which is a fair point actually, don't know how many people are aware of Brace TV, but what John does when he comes along, he films lots of council meetings and so on and so forth. And again, quite rightly, I think quite early on in the Cameron government, they changed the rules so to allow people to mini broadcast. So I think John will be doing that, as he does, bless him, to every one of these. If anyone does anyone have a particular objection to John doing that? No, I can't see it, so that's fine, so everyone can carry on. So I just wanted to make sure everyone was comfortable around that. Okay, we haven't achieved 8 o'clock yet, which no doubt leaves us plenty of time for the Hoylake Golf Resort. I'm hoping that everyone will be able to go home at least by 9 o'clock. So, don't want to try and time limit it, but we've had rehearsed a lot of the arguments over the years. If people are going to make contributions either from here or from the floor, that will leave less time for other people who might want to ask questions. So, if we can all bear that in mind. David, I think at the last council there were a number of people were probably at. We were told that the bids had come in and we were ready, and the finances, they're all being sorted out, and all being sorted out very quickly. So, have you got an update for us about where we're up to?
Yes, I can give you that. Yeah. So, as people will be aware, there was an extraordinary council meeting on the 25th of February of this year where members discussed the Celtic Manor Resort and how that should be considered as we move forward. The outcome of that council meeting was to take the funding and phasing plan when that had been received and assessed by the council's officers and advisors to a scrutiny committee for them to consider the funding and phasing plan, and then they would make a series of recommendations to a future cabinet meeting, and then it would be for the cabinet to decide on the project and if it should move forward, and if so, how. Now, in terms of the timescale for that, I don't have an exact one at the moment, because as you'll be aware, there will be local elections in May. There'll be a new leader of the council. There may be a different administration. We don't know yet. I couldn't comment. All I'm just saying is the process to be gone through, and then as soon as we know what the administration is and who the leader is, we will have a discussion with them about the timetable for those meetings. I think the likelihood is that there would probably be a scrutiny committee to consider the funding and phasing plan probably in June of this year, and then there would be referral potentially to a cabinet in July of this year. But again, I can't confirm that yet, obviously, until after the elections have taken place and we know how things are from there. So at the present time, we have now the funding and phasing plan that is being assessed, and then when that assessment is completed, we will be in a position to move it forward as members have asked through the scrutiny committee and then the cabinet for decision.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, David. Before we hand out any further questions to David, to the public, any questions we want to ask here, or do you want to hear what the public have got?
Just very briefly, David, we were obviously at the council meeting on the 25th, and obviously we tried to vote against it and lost, but it has a feel to me of having been kicked into the long grass so that a decision can be taken away from elected members. I'm just wondering, obviously I don't expect you to answer that, but I'm just wondering, once it's been to cabinet, where does it go after that?
Okay, under the council's governance arrangement, the decision on the Hoylake Golf Resort, as I understand it, is an executive decision. So that means it's a decision of the